Here we go. Another week of the DC Sports Huddle. I'm Dave Johnson with Rob Woodfork, Dave Preston, George Wallace. You see he is on the run at the Washington football team training as they count down, of course, the game against Carolina Panthers. Hey, we're almost giddy this week. We have a Washington football team winning to talk about and going forward. The Washington Spirit in the championship game. If we have some time, we'll get to them. The Wizards, the Capitals, everybody's getting it done right now. So suddenly Washington's a hot place. But we have to start with the Washington football team. And we have to start with Rob Woodfork. Again, I'm not going to go out on a limb and talk about the NFL being fixed. However, it's a heck of a drama series, the way this league is constructed. Does anybody think it's coincidence that suddenly Cam Newton ends up in the Carolina Panthers a week before he plays Ron Rivera in the Washington football team? I mean, come on, there's too many of this stuff happens in the NFL. Smiling is Rob Woodfork because he's written out 25 columns why Washington should have claimed Cam Newton. And I joke about that, but they're all well-constructed arguments. And certainly we've seen reasons why, as they've gone through quarterbacks, that might have been a good option. Not Cam Newton is very much in Carolina. So we'll begin there. Rob Woodfork, I know you'll be writing about it on WTOP.com this week. What a setup. Nice win over some guy named Tom Brady, the Buccaneers. But now the drama of Cam Newton playing his old coach.
Yeah, and I know this is going to be George's favorite episode of the season by far, since it'll be so Cam-centric. But, I mean, what he did coming off the street, literally coming off the couch, what he said was eating cereal, and then coming in and then scoring touchdowns on each of his first two touches of the game is just, I mean, it's terrific. And they getting a guy off the street and being able to integrate him into the offense, even if it's just a goal line package, was really good for Carolina. Who, oh, by the way, they didn't beat a slouch. It was a one-loss Arizona team at home that has a defense that ranks in the top 5, both in scoring and in yardage. So this was not a cheap win on the part of the Carolina Panthers. But looking ahead to this week, I mean, Washington, look, we've been talking about how much the defense has been struggling this year, and give them all the props for doing what they did against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That is, at the end of the day, that is a Super Bowl team. And whether they're playing like it at this moment or not, they were coming off a bye. They had a lot of momentum coming in, far more than Washington did on a 4-game losing skid. So, give Washington all the credit in the world for winning that game. But, I mean, we've seen them do this so many times. They rise up, they beat a team that nobody gives them a chance to beat, and then they lay an egg against a team that everybody thinks that they should beat, who is equal to or lesser than they are. So Carolina, I think, is maybe just a tick better than they are. And so, and again, that going up against another tough defense. And it would be great to see Ron Rivera get a win in his old stomping grounds, a place where, ironically, he was fired for losing to Washington in part. But, and to see Taylor Heineke, who played for that team, and to see Joey Sly, who played for that team, to see them have a role in winning that game would be great. But I think this game is about Cam Newton. I think that there's a reason why he's going to be the starter. I think he's going to lock down that job, and I think he's going to take the Panthers to the playoffs and make Washington really sorry that they didn't sign him. If you look at his numbers, even last year, when everybody said he sucked and he didn't get the job done in New England, his QBR higher than Taylor Heineke's is this season. If you look at his quarterback, his passer rating, comparable to what you are seeing with Heineke right now. So again, give Heineke all the credit in the world for having his best game probably ever against Tampa Bay on Sunday. But, I think Washington would be a different team if they had Cam Newton, and I think they would be different for the better, especially considering they've struggled so much in the red zone this year. What was Cam doing in his first game? So.
Right. No, and we get well-constructed arguments, and I think going back to last year, there's the argument you bring in a Cam Newton to serve as a role model, a veteran on this team.
Right, and that's another thing is the Washington defense for years has struggled against guys like that. I mean, you talk about Cam Newton, Dante Culpepper. I mean, the list goes on and on of guys that they've struggled, those mobile quarterbacks that they have struggled against. I think that's going to be a matchup problem for them, especially without Chase Young on the field to chase him. There's no Montez Sweat to go chase him. You're literally using 7th round draft picks from the last 2 years to start at defensive end against one of the premier mobile quarterbacks we've ever seen. That's a tough ask for that defense.
And speaking of being mobile, it's a good thing Taylor Heineke is mobile, even with the 5 sacks he suffered over the weekend, because again, the Washington offensive line is still not up to speed. But before we get to you, George Wallace, again, Taylor Heineke proved on Sunday why I thought, again, this is not about him being the quarterback of the future, but any guy that slept on his sister's couch in Georgia while he was still trying to make his way back into professional football was not going to fold up and cry and get disappointed and go away. The beauty of Taylor Heineke, the rest of the way, however this ends up, he is going to come out and try to make something happen every week and compete hard. And that will give Washington a chance. George Wallace?
I don't know how many times I need to tell Mr. Woodfork that the Cam Newton thing, would they be better with him right now? Yes, but that's not what the deal is. He's looking for a long-term quarterback, which, by the way, this franchise probably will never find. Let's be honest about that. Okay? And
the Lions are still looking after 60 years.
It was about last year, Alex Smith threw a wrench into the whole thing. He came back, played well to get to the playoffs. You think you have Dwayne Haskins, you get rid of him. Heineke comes in. We know the story. He wasn't going to bring Cam here. He's not the quarterback of the future, and that's what Ron's looking for. And who knows what happened with the two of them? Obviously, something may have happened, because if you're trying to win now, yes, you pick up the phone or you text, whatever you do, you Snapchat, you get Cam Newton if you're trying to win. Okay, I get that, but that's not the deal right now. He's not looking. Cam's not the future of this team, and that's just the bottom line. That's the end of it there. That's not going to be a thing. So Cam very well could come out and throw 4 touchdowns Sunday against his old coach, and they could very easily win the game. And Ron Rivera he's going to tell you it's about the future, and it's about finding the long-term solution. How many times has he said this year, winning last year, a terrible 7-9 NFC East puts the expectations up here, but we're not at that point yet.
But it's hard to swallow that when you pass on a 32-year-old mobile Cam Newton in favor of a 38-year-old immobile Ryan Fitzpatrick, who, oh, by the way, blew out his hip in the first quarter of his first game. As soon as that injury happened, you should have had Cam on the phone, just like Carolina did when they got their quarterback hurt.
So which leads me to this. Is it possible that Ron doesn't bring him in because he doesn't want to, because of the expectation comment that he knows they could win this year, and you don't want to set them even higher because he knows they're more than just a quarterback away? I'm just saying.
That's a great point. I never thut of that.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Rob. Thank you. Put that in your column. Put that in your column.
Yeah, let's give George Wallace, we got to give bonus points for a couple of things. That's good long-term thinking. And also 11 weeks into the DC Sports Huddle, and we just had a Snapchat reference, if I heard correctly, by George Wallace, saying that apparently.
Hey, I could have said TikTok. I know Dave's big on TikTok. Preston's on the TikTok. I know.
Right.
That's what the kids are doing now.
Well, Dave's my TikTok influencer, and because of that, even though I follow you on TikTok, Dave, I want your thoughts on the DC Sports Huddle. Jump in here.
Oh, well, the Newton signing is a great shot in the arm for the Panthers offense that I think is 32nd in the NFL in passer efficiency. This is a Panthers team that their defense is in the top quarter, maybe even in the top 10 in most categories. So that's going to be the challenge this upcoming week for Taylor Heineke and the Washington offense that has been consistently uneven this season. They've had some issues in the red zone. They didn't have it this past Sunday against Tampa Bay, but it's going to be a challenge to go on the road, take on a defense that's 4th best in the league at getting off the field on 3rd down, tied for 4th in the league in sacks, especially after you gave up 5 sacks against Tampa Bay. Once again, we saw this past week, Washington winning it's not a must win as much as it's a precipice win, that if you lose, you fall off the precipice into complete non-contention. That was the win against the Giants. That was the win at Atlanta to keep them from going 0-2 and then 1-3. That was the win this past Sunday to keep them from going 2-7. So it'd just be nice to see this team win a non-must win game. And they're going to have a challenge this Sunday to do so at Carolina. I don't think they have what it takes to beat the Panthers on the road.
And that's the other thing is this does have playoff implications, even though their records are not very good, because as of today, the Panthers sit in that 7th and final NFC wild card. So they are in the driver's seat. Washington needs to win this game in order to have that tiebreaker advantage. And they would, of course, have to go on a roll toward the, to end the season, especially that NFC East gauntlet, because those conference wins, they count in tiebreaker scenarios.
And again, we'll use the hashtag precipice game, right? Precipice, is that the word we're using this week?
Something like that.
In hashtag. All right, so I'm going to throw this out here. The Washington we didn't think they win against Tampa huge. Suddenly now we're throwing out playoff situation or possibility there. Is the scenario is that the defense continues to play like it did against Tampa Bay and Taylor Heineke doesn't turn the ball over? Is that the pathway to a possibility of a playoff, or is that oversimplifying it?
Dave, I think that's the recipe, because last year they rode this defense that had kind of underperformed in the first 9 games. They rode it to a 4-game winning streak. They were able to take advantage of some quarterback matchups. Granted, they don't have that, they don't have that, in front of them this year. They're actually going up against non-backups for the most part, although Cam Newton would technically be a replacement quarterback this Sunday. There is a path to the postseason. I think it's also a byproduct of the fact that now you have a 7th team in each conference. So it's almost 50% of each conference you're able to qualify for the playoffs. The NFC is down this year. You look at 9-8, 8-9 might make the postseason. And while that's good for some, as an NFL fan, I'm not big on watering down the playoff party. But you know what? You qualify, and there's qualifying for the playoffs is qualifying for the playoffs. There's not an asterisk, even though we all feel that there is, with Washington going 7-9 last year and winning the division. If Washington goes 8-9 or 9-8 and somehow qualifies as the 7th team in the NFC, nobody's going to put an asterisk on that, except I might, just for fun.
All right. Final thoughts on the Washington football team. George, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves after last week's. I mean, because they did lose Chase Young also for the rest of the year, too, and Sweat's out for a while. So defense is struggling. Benjamin St. Juste still dealing with a concussion. So they are still thin on the defensive side of the ball. And I mean, who knows if these offensive guys are going to get back? Logan Thomas still not on the practice field just now. Sam Cosmi was available in emergency situations last week along the offensive line. He's still not 100%. Look, it could very well easily be Tampa coming off a loss in a bye. They figured they had Washington right where they didn't need to show up really, and thought they could turn it on in the fourth quarter, which is what I thought they would actually do. So we'll see how they respond this week. Yeah, of course it gives this team confidence, because you got to win against the Super Bowl champs. No matter how you got it done, you got it done. You still beat Tom Brady, and that's the NFL. If you only get 17 chances. So, it is going to be a lot tougher this week. Cam Newton is going to be fired up. Carolina is going to be fired up playing Ron Rivera. So they're going to have to match that intensity, go on the road. It is going to be a tough place to play. I don't think they have enough to get it done in Carolina, but we'll see how they respond. It's going to be interesting to see how they respond dealing with coming off the win, and just seeing how they can take it into next week and deal with that success that they had from last week. I think that'll tell you a lot. If they come out and play with the same intensity they played with last week and come up, just short, lose by a field goal, this and that, then okay, maybe you can see that they've got some things heading in the right direction. But if you come out with the same, mental errors, unforced errors, then you're kind of right back where we thought this team was.
And the win over Tampa, I think, was again a reminder that Ron Rivera is the coach going forward. That no matter what happens the rest of the way, there should not be any consideration of making a change. Because if you don't have a coach that you want to play for, you don't have that kind of result Sunday, like the Washington team did against Tampa Bay, and you don't have this, lo and behold, playoff conversation that we didn't think we'd be having about a week ago. Rob, close the Washington chapter for us.
I'll just give you my prediction. I think Carolina is going to win 28-17. I think Cam scores all 4 touchdowns, 2 by ground, 2 by air, and Washington gives up. Look, here's the thing. Washington gives up. They're I believe 4th worst in the league in terms of opponents' passer rating. They opposing quarterbacks have a 104.8 passer rating against that defense. And I just don't see them being able to stop Cam from being able to be efficient enough for them to win. And certainly they don't have an answer for his mobility.
All right. Washington football team against the Panthers and Cam Newton.
And if
I
we
can't
all
wait
pick
till
Carolina,
Monday.
that can only mean that Washington's going to win.
Yeah, right. Well,
I actually have Cam catching a touchdown pass.
Oh.
I have Cam with the reception. Flea
either
flicker.
way,
You did that twice in
That-
New England
that is
last
the
year.
game-winning drive, and it's a 19-11 final score.
either way, the
Man, he's
NFL
trying
recap
for-
with Rob Woodfork on WTOP.com will be must read on Monday. So
He's trying
Let's-
hard for that
let's shi-
origami.
yeah. Let's shift to the Washington Wizards. At 10-3, as we tape this team is for real. It's Wes Unseld Jr. is quickly established himself as someone that is going to guide this team places, period. Full stop, as the hip kids like to say now. Because I think it needs to be noted, this is not a Washington football team, Washington Wizards team, rather. This Wizards team is not at full strength. Bradley Beal's missed 3 games. No Rui Hachimura. No Thomas Bryant. Just like some of the teams are playing are not at full strength. It's early in the season. I think it is significant. They're 3-0 without Bradley Beal. No, don't start the debate. They're a better team without Bradley Beal. They need Bradley Beal. But in past seasons, if you were missing a Beal or a Wall, you'd say, oh, there's really not a chance. That's not the way this team rolls right now. This is a team that is fun because it's playing good fundamental team basketball, and it's doing what winning teams do, like the game against the Cavaliers, like the game against the Pelicans, have a bad half, a bad 3 quarters, and then come back and break the other team's heart. For years, other teams did that to the Wizards, as they, for a while, would seem like the better team, but ultimately the team that actually was better would win. Now the tables have turned. The Wizards are flexing their muscles and acting like a better team. I'll start with you, George.
I froze out and jumped out of there, so let me pick up what you're going. Go around the horn.
We'll go around the horn. We'll go.
Yeah, Preston's got
Hey,
That's
it.
a nice-
that's
a nice way to say
ESPN's
George-
intellectual property. We
George-
never said that. We never said those words.
Right. George was double parked. That was a problem. My Dave Preston, you pick up instead.
Well, what I like is how this team's doing the little things, and the little things often loom large. Believe they're 9th in the NBA in rebounding margin and turnover margin. So not only are they're going out and winning the little battles on the boards, but they're also not beating themselves by turning the ball over a ton. 3-pointers, it's a 3-pointer game. And I believe right now the Wizards rank 4th best in the NBA in shooting the 3, and they're number 1 in the NBA in defending the 3-pointer. And in today's open space game, that can't be discounted enough. Major props to Wes Unseld Jr. And it's a shame that a guy like him didn't get an opportunity like this earlier, because you see, this is a guy who easily could have been a head coach 5 years ago. But I'm glad that other teams made the mistake of not hiring him. I'm glad that he's in DC.
And Tommy Sherritt gets some credit because he assembled a roster and just receiving a contract extension, a roster that now has options and shooters everywhere. And we're seeing that because they don't win these games where they didn't maybe perform at their best against the Pelicans or against the Cavaliers, unless you have guys like Kyle Kuzma or Kentavious Caldwell-Pope that can make big shots down the stretch. Rob?
Yeah, and Dave is great at giving us the stats, but I'm going to give you the eye test. I mean, when you watch this team and you watch one of their games, you could throw the record out. If you didn't show me the record, I would say that that's a good team that's just toward the top of their conference, because they play with heart, they play with passion, they play with you can tell that they're well coached, they play with discipline. So, I mean, just watching this team play, it just feels different than it has in years past. And that's not a slight or a dig at the other coaches that preceded Wes Unseld Jr. But I mean, just he's got them at a level that is beyond anything that we have seen in recent years. And the comparison that comes to mind is, and I know I'm not trying to say that they're about to three-peat twice, but it reminds me of the Chicago Bulls during the Michael Jordan era, where you had Doug Collins and he was getting them to the playoffs and they were a good team. But once they got Phil Jackson, that took them to another level. So if Wes Unseld Jr. is like the Phil Jackson of DC, that's a great, great hire. And that's kind of what it feels like right now. I think Wizards fans are legitimately excited, and they have a right to be excited about this team.
Because Wes Unseld Jr. is guiding this team. And that's a big reason why to be excited. He's not caught up in 10-3, as he so eloquently put. They have bigger things that they want accomplished going forward. And I'll say it again. I believe Wes Unseld Jr. is more prepared than any NBA head coach in the history of the game. And that, I say again, is because he grew up with a franchise legend, Hall of Famer as a father. He grew up in that locker room with the championship bullets, and basketball literally has been his life. And he won't talk about this, but there's so much in that brain of Wes Unseld Jr. from so many experiences, from his childhood to scouting to video work. He's better prepared, I think, because of the way he was raised than any NBA coach in history, and that will bode well for the Wizards. I know it sounds dramatic, but again, I can't think of a Hall of Fame son that has been put into this kind of coaching position. Somebody.
It's funny. I would love to have seen, and I know it's, you look back, whatever, and the whole Scott Brooks thing, and the roster's different, but I just have a hard time believing that with the roster that Tommy's put together now, and yes, you lose Russell Westbrook, but I would have liked to have seen, and I'm not taking anything away from Wes, just talking here as amongst the four of us, nobody else is listening. Scott Brooks with this team.
Yeah, I mean that's a good question because, and here's the thing. I mean, from a roster standpoint, they're deeper and they are better than they were, I think, than they were last year. All the pieces that they got in that Russell Westbrook trade have so far they've paid off big dividends. So I like this team. I like the fact that they've got big bruisers around the rim. I like the fact that they have shooting on the perimeter. I mean, that's a team that can match up against some good teams pretty well there in the playoffs.
No, and I think George makes a good point, and Rob, you said it best. As we compliment Wes Unseld Jr., this is not a slight on Scott Brooks or anyone before him, because it is different rosters, it's different situations. All we're saying in terms of Wes Unseld Jr. is that he is the one that is coaching the team now, and he is more than prepared to have success with this team. All right, we've reached the point, the audible at the line of scrimmage. George, so you don't get double parked again, do you have anything else on your mind before we close this edition of DC Sports Huddle?
I'm calling it that it's finally going to happen this week. Mike Loxley is right. It's almost time to beat a top 10 opponent. This is the week Maryland gets it done against Michigan at home and becomes bowl eligible for the first time. That's it. That's my audible. That's my hot take. It's got to happen at some point. I mean, it doesn't have to happen at some point. You'd like to see it happen at some point, but I think this is the week it's going to happen.
All right, Rob Woodfork.
All right, only because Chris Cheon isn't here. He's a Seton Hall grad, so I'm going to give his Seton Hall team some props. On the same day that Juwan Howard, the former Bullet, gets a 5-year contract extension at Michigan, this Seton Hall knocks off the Wolverines and probably out of that number 4 spot in the rankings. So big ups to Seton Hall for more than 30 years later avenging that loss in the championship game.
Yeah, the same mistakes.
I'm going to say the Washington, give some love to the Washington Spirit. They're going to win the NWSL title this Saturday when they take on Chicago. Trinity Rodman is going to, 19-year-old Trinity Rodman will score the game-winning goal. They'll win it 2-1, and it will cap an incredible story of a team that for a while didn't have a practice field it could go to because there was so much turmoil in its front office and with its ownership group. And I don't know if we can point to any other situation in sports where a team wins a championship when so many fans of that team are using the Twitter handle or hashtag sell the team as they are angry with the owner. So there's been so much that we think is going on behind the scenes. I say we think because we don't even know totally the magnitude of what it is. We hear of things like toxic work culture and allegations of harassment. So we don't know all the specifics. All we know is this team has gone on an incredible run to win a playoff game on the road in Tacoma, Washington, which was underwater last week because of a rainstorm, and to get to where they are, it's an incredible story. And I don't think it's going to stop on Saturday. Now, that was also, as I was calling an audible at the line of scrimmage, I was expanding on my Audible because I wanted Dave Preston to get his Audible in before we close the DC
Wait,
Sports Huddle. So
real
I was
fast.
doing a little, what?
Real fast, Dave J, you're talking about sell the team, toxic work culture. Which team are you talking about? The one I'm with right here or the other soccer team?
Ooh,
Okay.
that's rough.
I was thinking it, but George said it. I was thinking it, but no.
Although
but-
the difference
but-
is the team Dave's talking about is actually winning and in
Well,
championship.
there's that,
So,
and that's
yeah.
and that's what I was gonna say. To Dave's point, I mean, to be able to thrive in that culture is exceedingly remarkable because
Yeah.
again, if you have all of that swirling around you and then it's public and then that's, causing more controversy. I mean, to be able to win and advance in the playoffs and keep that focus and be that good amidst all that, I mean, hats off to them. And I hope they complete the feat. And it would be great if Trinity Rodman does score it because she's already the youngest player in the league's history to score a goal in the playoffs. So it would only be that much more remarkable if a literal teenager is the one who leads you to a championship.
All right. And then we'll call Dennis Rodman, Trinity Rodman's dad, not vice versa. All right.
Right.
Dave Preston, close this up.
Audible at the line, Virginia Tech making a big coaching change this week. Justin Fuente gone after almost 6 years. The classic case of the tortoise and the hare in the Commonwealth. Fuente led Virginia Tech to the Coastal Division his first season at the helm. The same year in Charlottesville, you had Bronco Mendenhall's team going 2-10. You look at the programs all these years later, it feels like UVA is in the right place. They've made the right moves slowly but surely. While for whatever reason, Virginia Tech couldn't capture the early momentum, there will be a lot of questions pointed as, for not getting the right quarterback. Bud Foster not really gelling well long-term because he's gone. He retired a few years ago. The question moving forward for Virginia Tech is how good is that job going to be? Because even though it is in the Coastal, even though it is a potential gem as far as a coaching job, I think Frank Beamer, his long tenure, he made the Virginia Tech job much better than it actually might be. So do they go, previously they went for a group of 5 head coach. That's what brought Justin Fuente to campus. Do they go for a high level assistant here? Everyone else in the ACC Coastal is watching with bated breath because they know that a Virginia Tech that's very good, as they were the first 7 years or so they were in the ACC, they can dominate that division. So big news on that front. And we cover these guys, different coaches, and even though he's got a good severance package, you always feel bad on one level for these coaches who are no longer employed because they didn't take this job to get fired. And their legacy has changed, obviously. So interesting times ahead for Virginia Tech.
All right. No,
he's got $10
million.
He's got $10 million to hang out for a little bit. So he's all right.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, and this is probably a topic for another time. And again, nobody wants to get fired no matter what they get paid.
No.
But ESPN did a story about if you take all the money owed to football coaches who have been fired in college sports, you've got the gross national product of
it's amazing.
Country.
It's ridiculous.
It's an amazing number. And that's a whole nother thing about the money that's placed on coaches in college sports. But we're up against the clock on the DC Sports Huddle, and George has to get back to a Snapchat account. So, that's going to do it for us this week. We thank you for your time. Dave Preston, Rob Woodfork, I'm Dave Johnson, along with the Snapchatter, George Wallace. This is the DC Sports Huddle.
Break.
Break.